Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of History is a Crime. I'm your host, Michael Roberts. My guest today is Emily Roberts, my beautiful wife.
Hi.
Current co-host. We'll see if she sticks around or not.
I thought you were going to say current wife.
Current wife. Current favorite wife.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the time you're hearing it. Emily, what do you know about David Koresh? The Branch Davidians.
I know that he is on a poster that we bought.
He is on a poster that we bought. Some barbecue sauce. I'm not really sure what's going on with that.
I only know his name because of you saying it.
Yeah. How do you feel about dead kids?
I mean, they're not my favorite.
Yeah, they're no one's favorite.
Oh my god. Sorry. How do you feel about dead kids? Oh!
Is that what you're going to be doing the whole time?
Yeah, I gotta have something to... I've got my crochet gear here. I've got Best Fiends. I've got my coffee. I don't need anything else.
Okay, well, make sure you pay attention.
Oh, I know. Oh, I'm Emily, by the way.
Yeah, that's a terrible introduction.
I'll just splice it together. Do you want to introduce me because it's your podcast? Or just say, like, I have my wife here with me today?
Man, this is rough.
Why?
First episode, everyone.
Baby, this is... My job is to make it sound better after.
Yeah. Okay. The man who would become known as David Koresh was born Vernon Wayne Howell in 1959 to Bonnie Sue Clark and Bobby Wayne Howell. Bonnie was only 14 and unmarried at the time, and before Vernon was even born, Bobby fucked off with some other woman.
Sorry. Dogs!
After that, Bonnie moved in with another man and eventually left Vernon in the care of his grandmother, Airline, I think is how you say that.
I name mine train stations.
Yeah. One of those old-ass, old-timey names that I have no idea how to pronounce.
It's not like Arlene.
Maybe. It's spelled E-R-A-L-I-N-E.
I prefer Airline.
Airline. At age 19, Vernon got a 15-year-old girl pregnant, but I don't know what consequences he actually saw from this. And this kind of became a thing with him. Afterwards, he claimed to have become a born-again Christian and soon joined his mother's denomination of the Seventh-day Adventists. Here, he became infatuated with the pastor's daughter. He claimed to have been praying over his Bible, and when he opened his eyes, found the Bible open to Isaiah 34:16, which says, "None should want for her mate." He took this as a sign from God that he was supposed to have this girl as his wife and approached the pastor about it. The pastor gave him a resounding absolutely the fuck not.
It's rough, huh? Mia, go lay down. Ooh, slobber, lots of slobber.
Jowl water.
Hey, go on. Ew. Just when she's walking that close, yeah, just stop talking.
Okay, I'm going to start that sentence over.
You're fine.
The pastor gave him a resounding absolutely the fuck not, and after pressing the issue, Howell was kicked out of the congregation for being a fucking creep.
Yeah.
Oh. In 1981, David Koresh, which is not what he was going by at this time, but I'm just going to start calling him that because Vernon Wayne Howell is kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
He moved to Waco, Texas, and joined the religious group known as the Branch Davidians. Now, at this point, we need to take a little bit of a history lesson and set up kind of who the Branch Davidians were and how they came to be. In 1929, a man by the name Victor Hotef, I think is how you pronounce his name. We're just going to make it a thing. I don't pronounce anything right. It's fine.
People will probably tell you how to correctly pronounce it, but you know what?
I can't wait to read my comments.
We're just doing our best. I'm really proud of you for having social media. I run the social media.
Oh, yeah, I'm not allowed to touch it.
Yeah, so if you talk to us on Instagram, it's going to be speaking with me.
Yep.
I'm his manager and producer and just coach in life.
I deleted my Facebook like 8 years ago.
After we met.
Yeah, right after we met.
After I stalked him on the internet, and that's how we met.
Well, don't need this anymore. And I never went back. It's great. Victor Hotef. He presented his ideas for the reformation of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in a book titled The Shepherd's Rod. The Shepherd's Rod, the 144,000, a call for reformation. This book was Hotef's personal interpretation of chapters 54 through 66 of the book of Isaiah. In his interpretation, Hotef thought the existing church was becoming too lax in its standards and ideologies and needed reform. Victor was disfellowshipped by his local Seventh-day Adventist congregation, which isn't exactly excommunication, but essentially does the same thing. He's not really allowed to, at this point, teach two members of that particular church. So he was like, fine, I'm going to start my own. He formed his own sect called the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists and traveled to an area just outside of Waco, Texas, and established the Mount Carmel Center. It was here that the group began to prepare for the second coming of Christ and the Armageddon that would accompany him. Victor died in 1955, and his wife Florence took over leadership of the Davidians. In 1957, Florence sold off most of the old compound and purchased a lot near Elk, Texas, and established the uncreatively named New Mount Carmel Center. Florence prophesied that the apocalypse was going to happen around April 22nd, 1959, which is interesting, because this wasn't something that was really found in her husband's original writings. She just kind of said, no, I think this is going to happen.
Oh my God, like every religion that's ever been made ever.
Yeah, basically. This wasn't the thing that...
Sauntering. This wasn't a thing, sorry. Sorry.
No.
No,
I think I was going to make a joke, and then I lost it.
I'm sorry. What does she have now?
A different bone.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, good girl.
If you've ever wondered what my life is like when we podcast, this is basically it.
Trying to clear that out. So she relocated the group back to Waco to fulfill some aspect of that prophecy. When that clearly didn't happen, Benjamin Roeder formed another sect out of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists that became known as just the Branch Davidians. He eventually succeeded in taking control over the Mount Carmel Center in 1962. When he died in 1978, his wife Lois took over as prophet of the group because being, a God-given appointment is just passed down to your next of kin.
I was going to say, I'm surprised at how many wives took over the husband. Like, that seems very,
pretty woke for the 60s
yeah.
and 70s, right?
Yeah, it's pretty woke.
At this time, the Branch Davidians couldn't really be considered a cult. They were more of just an offshoot of an offshoot of an offshoot of an offshoot of Protestantism, which is where Seventh-day Adventists come from, is Protestantism. Each time becoming more and more focused in their more, I say radical, I don't really mean, they're not, I mean, their ideas are just becoming more narrow, more focused.
It reminds me of like, how Mormonism has like 5 different like sects. They have like fundamentalist Mormons, regular Mormons, and that kind of thing. And each one is like the same religion, but they're all like also completely different.
Yeah.
It's like a giant game of telephone.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Lutheranism. When it broke off from Catholicism.
Really, any religion that's ever started out one way has completely changed. Which reminds me, by the way, I forgot to tell you that your mom told me that they are thinking still of moving to Utah to get married. And I was like, it's not like legal, right? Like, that you can't.
Well, Dad was a missionary. He knows that.
But like anywhere, it's not legal. Even in Sister Wives, there's no legal marriage there, and they're on TV. Sorry.
Anyway. Yeah. That's my foot. foot.
Dude, she's killing me. Kiddo, that fucking noise is in the background of every single episode, I swear to God.
It just makes it your podcast.
Yeah, you know what? We have set up the jankiest thing ever right now to keep the sound out, and there's still a deaf dog next to us chewing everything. And so you know what? This is just what you come here for. If you don't like it, you can fuck off. Sorry.
More folk. Okay, so the church members were currently split between Lois Roden, which is Benjamin's wife, and her son, George Roden, who... Oh, sorry. They were split on who should be the president of the Branch Davidians. And people were kind of... They all occupied the same area, but they were all like, no, Benjamin should do it, or Lois. It's not Benjamin, George at this point. Benjamin's dead.
No.
Okay. So when Vernon Koresh arrived at the Waco compound in 1981, he was fairly well received. You should look up a picture of him, because people would call him handsome. I don't personally see it.
Looking up David Koresh?
Yeah. It's spelled with a K.
I know.
Like I said, I don't personally see it.
You're asking me from like a woman's perspective?
Yeah.
Oh no, he looks like a 70s serial killer. Are you telling me that?
Yeah, there's a couple where his hair is like longer and even more wild.
He's got like the aviator sunglasses. He has a mullet in every single photo.
Like a Gracie mullet.
Like a Gracie mullet. Yeah, no, he's... I don't know. I guess maybe like in the 70s. Okay, like I could see how maybe you would like...
I don't know.
Okay, he's not like a bad looking guy. Today, not my jam.
Maybe it's just because I know what he's gonna do.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what he's gonna do.
Okay, so when he arrived at the Waco compound at Mount Carmel in 1981, he was fairly well received. It was around 1989 that he actually started going by the name of David Koresh. Koresh is the biblical... Koresh is the biblical name of Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian king that freed the Jews from Babylonian enslavement, and he was named as a Messiah for doing so. A Messiah is just like a great savior, typically, of the Jewish people.
Right.
Taking the first name of David was meant to draw lineage to the biblical King David, whose bloodline the next Messiah would be born from. And here I repeat myself again. Good job. Really should have proofread this.
Baby. You're okay.
It's fine.
Oh my God.
He would have his name legally changed in 1990, so I'm just going to refer to him as David Koresh from here on out.
What was his original name?
Vernon Wayne Howell.
I would have changed my name to David Koresh too.
Yeah, me too. He played guitar and sang in the church services, and I mean, he was generally seen as good-looking and charismatic. In 1983, he began claiming to have the gift of prophecy, and it's speculated that he was sleeping with Lois Rader, who was in her late 60s at this point.
And he was how old?
At this point, he would have been 20s.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess whatever floats your boat.
I mean, she's not 15, so...
I mean, better to go that extreme than the opposite, so, you know what?
Yeah, to each their own. Unless you're a minor, then don't do that.
Well, yeah. You can't consent if you're a minor. I don't give a fuck what anybody says.
Yep.
Truth.
He began claiming that God had chosen him to impregnate Lois, and that the resulting child would be the chosen one.
Oh my God, this is so many religious things put into one. He thinks that she's the Virgin Mary now. Well, she's not a virgin, but like
definitely not a virgin.
Basically,
his kid's going to be the next Jesus, which we get to here in just a little bit. Actually,
I want to know if people think you say Jesus weird.
Do what?
You say it like Z, like Jesus.
Jesus. And it was around this time that Lois allowed Koresh to start teaching his own message, the Serpent's Root, further splitting the sect. Remember, Lois's son George had aspirations to lead the religion and saw Koresh as an interloper to that end. So now you've got like infighting within infighting within infighting. As tensions within the group mounted, a fire burned down an administration building on the compound campus, and George blamed David for the fire. David responded that no man set that fire.
Was it God? Did God set the fire?
Probably. Or maybe at this time he just started seeing himself as
Better than
more
everyone.
than human.
Yeah, well, it's sure what it sounds like.
Shortly after this, George, with the backing of most of the church, forced Koresh and his followers off the church grounds. Koresh and around 25 of his followers, including the wife he claims God told him to take, made their way to Palestine, Texas, 90 miles from Waco. The group would remain here for the next 2 years, living in tents and some buses they managed to find. He began recruiting people to his own sect from all over the world, and he even traveled and traveled to Israel sometime within this 2 years. While in Israel, Koresh says he received a vision from God that he was the modern-day incarnation of Cyrus, the Persian king I just told you about. And it was here that he set up the first Davidic kingdom in Jerusalem, Israel, Palestine at the time, but in the Middle East, Jerusalem. And I need to digress again. There's this idea in some evangelical orders that Armageddon can only be brought once certain conditions are fulfilled. Almost like God is a less all-powerful being who can end the world at any time it pleases, and more rules-lawyering dungeon master forcing us to figure out the puzzles he designed. One of those requirements is that the Jewish people must be inhabiting the land promised to them by God, which is most widely believed to be modern-day Israel. The Branch Davidians were an annihilationist group, still not a cult at this point, who think God is only allowing a specific 144,000 followers into heaven.
At what point does it go from like a religious movement to a cult?
I think the leader has a lot to do with it. I mean, there's an argument to be made that anything's a cult until you start getting tax breaks.
I like that.
I mean, Scientology's technically a religion now,
right?
But for a long time, they were just a group of wackadoodles that followed a guy around the ocean looking for gold for a while. L. Ron Hubbard would be a fun episode. 144. Okay. Meanwhile, the rest of the souls on Earth, all of the fallen angels, demons, and Satan itself, will cease to be instead of languishing in hell for all eternity. There are variations of this idea all over the place, so I'm sure you get the basic idea. To this end, Victor Hotef, the founder of the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, wanted to establish a Davidic kingdom in Palestine, which Koresh ultimately did in Jerusalem. Jerusalem at the time was split by Palestine and Israel until Israel occupied the eastern portion of the city. Koresh thought himself as a martyr and thought the perfect spot for his martyrdom would be his Davidic kingdom in Israel, but later changed his mind and decided the U.S. would work just fine for his cause, and went back to Texas to establish what would be the new Davidic kingdom in Waco. So we're starting to see those makings of him thinking that he is the next Messiah, he's the next Jesus Christ. I'm going to sacrifice myself for the world and allow people to ascend to heaven. Lois Rodin died in 1986, and George took over as leader of the Branch Davidians, leaving Koresh's group wondering if they might ever be able to return. In 1987, Koresh got the opportunity he was waiting for. George Rodin had at least one body exhumed from the Mount Carmel Cemetery, and Koresh pounced on this, claiming that he was challenging Koresh to a resurrect-off.
Resurrect.
I think that was supposed to be a resurrection-off. To a resurrection-off for leadership of the group. George says he was just relocating the cemetery, which does actually seem more likely, but David was undeterred. Instead of attempting to do something crazy, like reanimating corpses, he called the cops and told them Rodin was desecrating the remains. The cops wouldn't do anything without proof, so Koresh snuck into the compound with 7 other armed followers, allegedly to try and get some photographic evidence. He was discovered and ended up in a gunfight with the people gathered, and this left George Rodin with a minor gunshot injury. When the cops arrived, they arrested Koresh's group and charged them with attempted murder, because they're the ones trespassing at this point.
No kidding.
Koresh's case was declared a mistrial, and the others were all acquitted. For his part, Rodin was jailed for contempt of court charges because he just wouldn't stop cursing during his trial pleadings.
This is what would happen to me if I was ever taken to court.
Ma'am, you're just here for a speeding ticket.
Fuck! God, fuck. Ma'am, you're just here for a speeding ticket.
At one point, he threatened Texas court officials with sexually transmitted infections.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so they slapped him with contempt of court, and he ended up serving.
He's a treat.
Yeah, so he was jailed this whole time, and then he served another 6 months because the legal motions he filed were riddled with with explicit language after being held in contempt for the same thing. So he just starts writing letters full of curse words, and they're like, "Hey, this is a court document. Maybe don't do that." Yeah, so probably not a real grounded individual.
Mm-hmm. You don't say.
In 1989, Rodden murdered another follower, Wayman Dale Adair, with an axe to the head after Adair claimed that he was the next Messiah.
Oh my god.
So they're attracting some real cool people. Kills it with an axe.
Oh my David Koresh. That's what I'm gonna start saying. Oh my David.
George was judged insane and sent to a psychiatric hospital. It also turns out that George hadn't been paying the taxes for the Mount Carmel Center since he took over from his mother.
Shocking.
And this allowed David Koresh and his followers to raise the funds to pay the tax bills and claim legal ownership of the compound. And just like that, David Koresh was now the leader of the Branch Davidian Church.
Did you hear the story of oh my god, what's his name? He's the guy, he's like still, I think he just got put in prison for it's another Mormon thing, but he had like a bunch of child brides, and he's like still like teaching his like religious teachings from prison.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, what is his name?
Recent?
It's like recently-ish. Like he is still in prison, and his teenage wives are still like, no, that's my husband, and he's still, God damn it, what's his name? He's a fundamentalist Mormon. I think he has like 36 wives. There was an episode of Eva Lives Here about him. That'd be another good one.
Gross.
Fundamentalist Mormon guy.
That must be quite the list.
Oh, look, Warren Jeffs.
Oh, yeah, he looks like he would have 36 child brides.
Yeah, he,
Yeah.
yeah. He's still, like, teaching in prison. Warren Jeffs, that's right.
Now that the religious group is under his control, David Koresh started turning the Branch Davidians into what could actually be considered a cult. He released the New Light tape, where he said God instructed him to procreate with all of the women in the group to create a house of David made up of his chosen people.
Oh.
So I think that's the difference between a cult and a religious movement.
Oh.
In this tape, he explained that all of the married couples were to be split, with the women vowing to only have sexual relations with Koresh.
See, this is also, Warren Jeffs did this. He, like, killed people's husbands and took their wives.
I think a lot of sex-based cult leaders do that, because I'm pretty sure like people like Keith Raniere and Jim Jones did things that were very similar. I could be wrong about Jim Jones.
Could you imagine some dude just being like, meh, that's mine now?
Yeah.
And the women just, like, went with it?
Yeah. I mean, the ones... some women left.
I'd have so many questions in a
but
cult.
Not enough.
But why do I have to do this? Do I have to? What happens if I don't? Gross. Gross.
Very gross. The men were forced into observing celibacy. The House of David was to be made of 24 children that would become the ruling elders during the millennium following the return of Christ.
Hang on 1 second.
Sexual and physical abuse come from Branch Davidian detractors and people who left the church cult. Some of them were inserted by the ATF, who have no jurisdiction over child protection, possibly to inflame the public against Koresh during the siege.
The ATF got involved?
Oh yeah, the ATF.
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Yeah,
that has literally nothing to do with like any of those things.
Yeah,
any of it.
No, not at all. Not with child protection.
What's the year of this?
This is, I mean, this takes place over a couple of years. So he takes ownership of the cult of the compound in '89.
I mean, maybe like Child Protective Services like wasn't really that much of a thing in the 80s.
Oh no, they were very involved with this also, just
Oh.
not yet.
But ATF got involved and it just like freaked people out.
Oh, we'll get to the
Sorry.
ATF there.
Sorry.
The ATF really fucks a bunch of stuff up.
Oh, lovely. Sorry.
Koresh was also on record as having fathered 12 children himself, and he did annul the marriages of married couples joining the church, claiming only he had sexual privileges with the women. So even new people coming into the church, he's like, yeah, you're not married anymore. Yeah.
I want to know like what the responses looked like. Do you think he had a comment box where you could like say what you needed to say? Like I want to know what that looks like.
Oh no, I don't think he cared what other people thought.
I know. I just like I want to know what that conversation looked like. Like, okay, so now you're part of the Branch Davidians. Also, you're not married anymore, but I am. And they're like, okay.
Can we leave? Nope.
Yeah, like what would they you might be saying this, but like would they do anything if people tried to leave? I mean, can you just leave a cult?
I think it depends on the cult. You did get people that left. Some people would leave their spouse because their spouse was still wrapped up in it, but the other partner would leave. People tried fleeing with their kids because David Koresh was fucking all of them.
I'd leave your ass there. I'm just kidding. Well,
I'm going to start a cult. Probably not going to join one.
Well, I mean, as long as you don't like take any other people's brides, like maybe I'd be okay with it.
No, we're not going far. You can make it. Now, it should also be worth noted that, like I actually just said, a lot of this is hearsay. We only have proof of one actual child abuse, sexual abuse against a child. And some of it was probably fueled by the Waco Tribune-Herald in a series of articles titled The Sinful Messiah by Mark England and Darlene McCormick.
Oh my God, you're saying that the press made it worse?
Weird. Again, possibly. We don't know how much of how many of the things that they interviewed people leaving the church, how much of what they said was true.
Angry people talk a lot louder than happy people.
Yep. The loud minority.
Caitlin.
Leave that in. Reporting the allegations of child brides, polygamy, and statutory rape. Nope, I need to read that sentence over again.
Talk a little tiny bit slower. Just a little.
I'm talking too fast.
Just like almost like you're nervous.
I think that's just how I talk.
Oh.
Good enough.
I have to do it too. I have to talk slower.
Some of this was fueled by the Waco Tribune-Herald in a series of articles titled The Sinful Messiah by Mark England and Darlene McCormick, reporting the allegations of child brides, polygamy, and statutory rape. Is that better?
Yep.
In these articles, they claim that Koresh was stating... Nope. In these articles, they claim that Koresh has stated his entitlement to 140 wives, that he fathered the children with girls as young as 12 or 13, and that he claims the right to marry any woman within the compound. The February 27th, 1993 article opened with the line, "If you are a Branch Davidian, Christ lives on a threadbare piece of land, 10 miles." I don't know why I put 16 kilometers in there. This is America. We measure our length and freedoms.
I almost just spit my coffee out. We measure our length and freedoms.
10 miles east of where... Damn it. 10 miles east of here, called Mount Carmel. He has dimples, claims a 9th grade education, married his legal wife when she was 14, enjoys a beer now and then, plays a mean guitar, reportedly packs a 9mm Glock and keeps an arsenal of military assault rifles, and willingly admits he is a sinner without equal.
Does he also like long walks on the beach?
That's the opening line to to the very first article of The Sinful Messiah by Mark England.
Will you say it one more time? For me. I just want to hear it a second time.
If you are a Branch Davidian, Christ lives on a threadbare piece of land 10 miles east of here called Mount Carmel. He has dimples, claims a 9th grade education, married his legal wife when she was 14, enjoys a beer now and then, plays a mean guitar, reportedly packs a 9mm Glock, and keeps an arsenal of military assault rifles, and willingly admits that he is a sinner without equal.
Okay.
Opening line to The Sinful Messiah.
Okay. Weird. I stand by my long walks on the beach comment. Enjoys a nice beer now and then. Dimples and claims a what did it say? 9th grade or 9-year-old education?
9th grade. He dropped out in the 9th grade.
Okay.
I don't think I said that earlier, but.
Well, now we know.
Yeah.
He has dimples.
Now, while it's very disgusting, the allegations of child abuse never turned up anything conclusive. Some of the members helped cover up the child brides when the allegations were investigated, and that was the end of that.
Dude, these were like some of their kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of individual members' children.
That makes me like sick to my stomach.
What really got the government's interest was all of the illegal weapons the Davinians were gathering. So the Waco Tribune Herald puts out these articles saying, oh yeah, he's a child rapist and a polygamist, which apparently go hand in hand at this point in time. Those are not equal, but...
Well... It's like, it's always been viewed as just like this really terrible thing. I don't know.
Deviant activity.
What do you think about polygamy? I've watched every season of Sister Wives, so my opinion is very valid. I got really good information.
I have no problem with people who want to be polyamorous. Doesn't bother me one bit.
I think that's different. Polyamory and
polygamy would be marrying multiple people, whether spiritually or not. And if that's your thing, then... I don't necessarily understand or agree with it, but...
Yeah, I can't... After watching Sister Wives, I don't really care what people do as long as it doesn't, like, hurt anybody else, but I don't know.
It's when... Yeah, consenting adults doing whatever they want is fine.
Right, and, like, this is obviously not consenting adults.
Yeah, this is just gross.
I don't care what you say, kids can't consent. I don't care if you're, like, all about it. Like, no. That's not consensual. Don't be gross.
Correct.
Don't be gross, David Koresh.
And David Koresh was very gross.
Ugh.
But allegations of child abuse notwithstanding, what really got the government's interest was all the illegal weapons the Davidians were gathering. In his new light tape, Koresh stated that they needed to begin amassing an army of God to prepare for the end times. This involved ordering larger quantities of firearms, both legal and not, ammo, grenade parts, black powder, and other explosives. In May of 1992, a UPS driver reported a damaged parcel that contained some of the items I listed above. On June 9th, the ATF opened a formal investigation, and a week later, it was classified as sensitive, requiring a high degree of oversight by Houston and the ATF headquarters. ATF agents went to speak with the Branch Davidians' gun dealer, who had them speak to Koresh on the phone. Koresh told the ATF that they were welcome to come inspect the firearms and paperwork for said firearms. I said that weird. Koresh told the ATF that they were welcome to come inspect the firearms and paperwork for said firearms, but the ATF declined. The ATF was able to get a warrant to search the compound on the basis that they suspected the group to be modifying AR-15 style weapons and M16 receivers to make them fully automatic. The ATF had an agent that had infiltrated the Branch Davidians named Robert Rodriguez, who was eventually discovered, but Koresh just let him go about his business without tipping Rodriguez off that he knew. So they get a mole in there. Koresh finds out who he is almost immediately. Just kind of lets him do his own thing.
Okay.
I think I had a joke there and then lost it again.
It took me this whole time to beat this level. I've been playing the same level this entire time.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know. Best Fiend, sponsor us.
Give us some of that ad money.
Man, you know what we need money for is sound equipment. I'm going to take a picture of this janky ass setup that we have and post it to patrons and say, this is what your money is being used for, because this is ratchet as hell. Mia finally fell asleep in the sunshine. Am I being so annoying? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. For those of you that don't know, the receiver of a gun is the part that actually fires the bullet. Full disclaimer, not a gun guy. I had to look all of this up, so don't at me if some of it's not entirely correct.
That reminds me, where is my gun? Do you know?
Pretty sure it's in my nightstand for some reason.
Okay. It must have been when you were out of town. I sleep on your side of the bed, and then I put the gun next to the bed, and I was like, where is that? I should know where that is. That will not be staying in this episode.
The barrel, stock, trigger. Oh God. The barrel, stock, trigger assembly, and everything else attaches to the receiver. You can buy typically, you can buy as many parts as you want without a sideways glance, but when you buy a receiver, you need to go through the normal legal hoops of firearm ownership. Typically, the receiver is the only portion of a gun that has its own serial number specifically for tracking it. Some guns, like the AR-15 and AR-10 platforms, have an upper and a lower. Most guns only have one receiver. This is important because it was suspected that Koresh's group was adding the M16 trigger assembly to modified AR-15 lower receivers, to make the guns fully automatic. This violates ATF regulations about owning special permits for fully automatic weapons. It's here that should also be noted while researching another podcast in 1994, the United States government passed a law banning assault-style rifles, which largely affected the AR-15. And some handguns and shotguns, but...
Did you say while researching another podcast?
Another episode, yeah.
Oh, you said another podcast.
Oh, no, researching another podcast episode. So it was shortly after the events at Waco that they were like, hey, maybe we should just ban assault weapons entirely.
Gotcha.
In addition to the search warrants obtained by the ATF, they had arrest warrants for Koresh and others that were also based on the alleged illegal firearms he was accumulating. The ATF also said that they suspected a meth lab was on site to gain military gear and DEA and DOD agents. Keep in mind that this was during the height of the war on drugs.
Oh.
So a potential meth lab bust was a huge deal, but it was also almost certainly bullshit.
The war on drugs was in the 90s, right?
I mean, it's still technically going on.
But that was the George Bush thing, right? The war on drugs.
No, it goes way before Bush. So Nixon actually initiated part of it, but his was about marijuana.
That's what I was going to say, because it was in that Sasquatch documentary that I watched.
Yeah.
Was the biggest drug in the war on drugs was marijuana.
Yeah, because in Vietnam especially, a lot of soldiers were coming home and they're like, hey, weed's pretty great.
Yeah.
So Nixon
can confirm.
Can't have any of that. And then when the Reagans took power, they expanded it to crack cocaine. And then the Bushes took over part. Yeah, it just kind of keeps going with a newer and newer drug.
We got to watch that show, Impeachment.
Oh, yeah.
First 2 episodes came out. We have a lot of things to watch.
Okay. The gun dealership that the Branch Davidians ran, they called it the Mag Bag.
Okay.
Was on its face completely legal. They regularly traded at gun shows and always had the proper paperwork to keep the transactions above board. All deliveries to the Mag Bag were only signed for by people allowed to trade firearms, and nothing they purchased at any given time was explicitly illegal. If you remember the Waco Tribune-Herald article I quoted above, these articles were actually held from publishing for at least 3 weeks. The ATF asked the publication to postpone printing the articles to keep the operation as under wraps as a large military movement could be. Initially... Should I reread that?
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, you can if you want, but... I have a random question. Do you want me to show you how to do any of the things? Or no?
What things?
Anything that I'm doing that you're not.
I mean, probably.
I don't have to. I'm just asking if that's something...
I get a wild hair to record and you're not here.
Well, I mean, any part of it, whether it's editing or even any of the social medias or anything. Or do you just want me to do all of it? No. That sounded really like a loaded question, but I'm asking.
We'll see.
Okay.
I feel like I've been saying we'll see a lot lately.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was like, let's record this weekend. Why don't you start a podcast? I kind of can't ask you a question because you're just like, oh, yeah. I have to just choose a...
Yeah.
Your mom yesterday was really sweet. She was like, she said that she loves the idea of a podcast for you. And she's like, I got so lucky with a daughter-in-law like you because of how much you've brought Michael out of his shell. And I was like...
Yeah, without you, I'd be just Probably in a shitty apartment playing video games all the time.
Well, which is not a bad thing. I just think you're so smart. Like, it's like a waste for you not to like be putting something out there that like entertains people or like brings information. I just think you should write a book or
I guess why I never actually do anything is because my brain gets going too quick. And then nothing ever coalesces.
Well, starting is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And I'm the opposite, where if I get excited about something, all of a sudden I'm like gung-ho and I know all the equipment and all the things. So the 2 of us,
everything's bought.
Yeah, and that's just how, must be how it works well. So that's how you teach me patience and I teach you not patience. I teach you, what's like a word for that? I teach you nothing. I've got nothing. Do I teach you anything? Why aren't you answering me?
What is that word? It'll come to me in the middle of recording, I'm sure. No. Initially, the Herald agreed to wait until the operation was done. Until after the operation was done. But when the execution date kept changing, they told the ATF they'd be publishing the articles as planned, and the agents would just have to figure it out from there. So they had all these articles written. The ATF is like, hey, can you wait just a little bit?
Right.
And then their operation date kept getting pushed further and further
Well,
back.
because they hold a bunch of stuff close to the vest, and right, if you were going to tell people that you were going to go into this compound, they would, move? Or like...
They just wanted them to be as unprepared as
possible.
Yeah,
like, yes. I'm just agreeing with what you're saying. I don't even know why I opened my mouth.
So the ATF attempted to carry out their search warrant on the morning of February 28th, 1993. Despite the knowledge that the Branch Davidians knew a raid was coming because they read the newspaper. And the local sheriff's department hadn't been told the operation was set to happen. Wow. Okay.
That was fun to watch.
Malnutritioned. The ATF attempted to carry out their search warrant on the morning of February 28th, 1993, despite the knowledge that the Branch Davidians knew a raid was coming and that the local sheriff's department hadn't been told the operation was set to happen. Since Koresh knew there was a raid coming, he told male members to arm themselves and prepare while sending women and children to take cover in their rooms. At 9:45 a.m.
He's like, be sure to be naked when I get back.
I'll be back. At 9:45 a.m., the ATF rolled up in SWAT-style tactical gear. They reported that they had heard gunshots and began unloading into the compound.
Oh.
There is some speculation that the shot the main team heard actually came from the team inside the compound to kill the dogs in the compound's kennel.
Oh, don't you... Okay, come on. You gotta, at least give me some... Hello? So they think the first shot was used to kill the... Why?
So the dogs wouldn't alert everyone else in the compound.
Oh, the ATF shot them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was thinking that the compound, shot them, and I was like, what are they going to do? Tell them what happened? Why would you shoot the dogs? Boo!
Oh, yeah, real bad.
Unsubscribe.
Dead kids are one thing.
Yeah, dead kids. There's something you ought to know about me. I can hear all about dead kids, but as soon as a dead dog comes up, I just lose my fucking mind. I can't help that I was made this way. That's a bummer.
Or it could have been an accidental discharge of someone else's gun.
I'm going to go ahead and believe that.
Something else I found interesting in researching another episode. One of the snipers at Point Sierra, I think they called it, during the Waco Siege, was actually the same sniper that killed Vicky Weaver, if you remember from the Ruby Ridge episode, the first episode that we released.
We'll link it in the description below.
So Vicky Weaver, wife of Randy Weaver, holding an infant son, sniper kills her. That same sniper is actually at the Waco Siege.
Oh my God.
At Point Sierra, and it's alleged that he either fired the first shot that this other guy heard in interviews afterwards, or reported hearing a shot. And that'll come up in the next episode too. So Keep that in mind.
It all just comes full circle.
So David Koresh was wounded in the opening moments of the raid, and within a few minutes, another member called emergency services begging that the gunfire stop, shouting, "Here they come again," and that's them shooting, not us.
Ugh.
The first ATF casualty was an agent that made it to the west end of the building where he was wounded. The ATF had 3 helicopters providing a distraction for ground forces that all took fire, but none of the flight crew members were injured. The ATF managed to gain access. The ATF managed to gain access to the roof in an attempt to get into Koresh's bedroom. One agent was killed on the roof, and another hit his head on a beam and fell to the ground but lived. And another was wounded and managed to climb down the ladder to safety. The local sheriff managed to negotiate a ceasefire, but later stated that the ATF wouldn't back off until they were almost completely out of ammunition. Within the first 45 minutes, 4 ATF agents and 5 Davidians were killed, with another 16 agents wounded. During the ceasefire, the Davidians allowed the ATF to remove their dead and wounded. At this point, the siege of Waco was taken over by the FBI due to the deaths of federal agents. Jeff Jamar, head of the Bureau's San Antonio field office, was put in charge as site commander. The hostage rescue team was led by HRT Commander Richard Rogers, who was criticized for his handling of the Ruby Ridge standoff the previous year. That was my elbow popping.
I heard that. That was gross.
Initially, the Davidian compound had phone contact with local news sources, and Koresh was giving phone interviews until the FBI cut all outside communications. For the following 51 days of the siege, the only outside contact the Branch Davidian members had was with the team of FBI negotiators. The negotiation team would later go on record with the Justice Department investigators criticizing tactical commanders for undercutting negotiations.
I have a question. Okay, so the ATF went in. They shot the dogs. There was like this whole thing, and the ATF was like, we're not going to quit till we use all of our bullets.
Yeah.
But now it's day what?
It's 51. So the siege itself lasted for 51 days. Entirely.
And the siege is just like getting the people out of this compound?
Yeah, so the ATF they had arrest warrants for Koresh and a couple other people because they, on suspicions of...
being gross.
Well, that too. But mostly illegally modifying weapons, which is why the ATF comes into it.
Right.
When they try executing the search warrant, allegedly the Branch Davidians shot back, and then the government just starts dumping bullets into
So I guess what I'm asking is what's happening for 51 days? Is this just where they're trying to like negotiate with Koresh and get... Okay.
Yeah, so negotiators are trying to get people out of the compound.
It's not like a straight up war happening for 51 days of just like bullets flying.
No.
Okay.
No.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to double check.
No, siege is typically where...
it's basically a giant hostage situation.
Well, an invading army, quote unquote, is coming in and they surround the castle in medieval times.
Right.
You would surround the castle, cut off all outside contact, and basically try starving the people out until they give up.
You're just forcing them to give up.
Yeah, so it's just seeing who can outlast the other.
Got it. Got it.
The government does this for 51 days.
Jesus.
The negotiation team would later go on record with the Justice Department investigators criticizing tactical commanders for undercutting negotiations. Within a couple of days, Koresh agreed that he and his followers would leave the compound if he could make a national broadcast explaining his church's beliefs. The broadcast was made, but Koresh backpedaled and said that God told him to wait. I tried listening to part of this broadcast. Not only is it kind of dull. I mean, Koresh is plenty charismatic, but it's just stuff that it doesn't interest me at all. He just says a lot of things like, I'm God's chosen person. I'm going to save the world.
Eye-roll-worthy things.
Yeah, basically, I'm going to save the world. He's got a messiah complex, and it shows.
I always say this to you, but I picture the redheaded meme kid that's like... He's just stroke your dick a little more.
Or get a kid to do it for you.
Oh! Shots fired. That was nasty.
Negotiators were eventually able to get 19 children, aged 5 months to 12 years out, leaving 98 people inside. Upon interviewing the children, sometimes for hours, which really feels like more of an interrogation,
Dude.
especially for kids, the agents learned that some of them had been sexually abused long before the siege had begun. Many of the rest of the children left inside were David's own children, and he considered them different, as evidenced by them being of the House of David. That
Okay, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that group of people he's putting together to get ready for the end times. The FBI managed to get a video camera to Koresh, who used it to record a video of him and his wives, saying that all who stayed were staying of their own accord, and that there were no hostages in the compound. The video showed at least 23 more children inside the compound with Koresh and the Branch Davidians, and the FBI grew concerned. Releasing this to the media outlets may inspire sympathy for the Branch Davidians. Koresh negotiated for more time inside his compound to complete the religious documents he was working on before surrendering. Many of his interactions with the FBI were so dense with biblical ideals and iconography that it alienated the FBI agents to him and his followers. That's better. The FBI agents began calling his speeches Bible babble.
Bible babble.
Bible babble.
Bible
babble.
Bubble bath. Netflix also sponsor us. Hashtag Big Mouth.
So there's this thing in war where opposing sides will attempt to dehumanize the other. With World War II, you had calling Germans the Krauts.
Okay.
And so on. It's an attempt to dehumanize them. So when you have to do bad things to them, it makes it easier for the soldier.
Well, just a little side note from my true crime podcast. If you ever get kidnapped, you're supposed to humanize yourself, because if the killer can hear that you're like married with kids and like you have a mom who loves you, like
it makes it easier to kill somebody
who is
if
less
you don't
human.
think of them as human.
Yeah.
Also, Three's a Crime sponsor us.
Maybe we should record you saying this has been a 3AC network production. Or maybe I'll just leave that in there. We'll see.
And I kind of feel like that's what's going on here. The FBI, they already think this guy's a kitty diddler. So
I don't diddle kids.
So he...
Sorry.
And now he's just like spouting all of this religious nonsense. And it's just driving a wedge further and further between him and the people attempting to remove him.
Well, you know, like they said in last night's episode of It's Always Sunny, the one way to get people to think you're a kitty diddler is to tell people you're not a kitty diddler.
FX sponsor us. Not Fox News, just FX.
Oh my god.
As the siege wore on, the FBI agents outside developed two factions. One side thought that they could get the Branch Davidians to surrender through negotiation. The other thought that force was the only way to resolve this. The tactics employed by the FBI became increasingly aggressive. They had M1 Bradley fighting vehicles, which, if you've ever seen one, are fucking gigantic.
M1 Bradley. Googling.
They had these Bradley fighting vehicles on constant patrol, firing tear gas canisters into the compound and crushing outer defenses and vehicles.
Wow. That's a big machine.
Yeah, they're
looks like a fucking ship.
I mean, it's a personnel carrier, so it just drives around holding troops. And they were using this thing to, crash through walls, drive over fences. Something I found like especially fucked up is that the drivers of these huge armored vehicles would intentionally and repeatedly drive over the graves of Branch Davidian members, but especially a gentleman named Peter Gent. If I remember correctly, he was one of the casualties in the opening salvo of this whole thing. This obviously pissed off the people inside the compound. It pissed them off so much that even the FBI negotiators trying to de-escalate the situation had to tell these drivers to knock that off. Like, you guys are just making it worse.
Yeah, seriously. Fucking... Just whatever.
The FBI rolled in giant speakers and use sleep deprivation. Playing recordings of jet planes and pop music, which is an actual torture technique. No, really, it's like a legit torture technique.
What is pop music back then?
Britney Spears.
What year is it now?
This is 1993. So I think Spears was on the scene.
Oh my God.
Maybe not. I was
Maybe she wasn't, but like they had like oh my God, like what are some bands that you listen to? Like who was around before I was born? No, that was like hip hop. That's different. Whatever. Okay.
I don't think a bunch of FBI agents are going to be especially discerning on the type of music they're playing.
They just brought speakers out and played pop and what?
Like jet planes, things with really shrill noises. Because another part of this tactic is they'll actually reduce the bass as far as it'll go and raise the treble.
Oh, so it's just like
high pitched as can be.
Oh.
They'll do it with Barney. Yeah, it's.
Oh, that would make me come straight out of that.
Yeah, you don't have to adjust it at all. Just play the Barney.
Like actually, you don't even need. I'm coming.
You're playing what?
Yeah,
I'm done.
Oh, okay.
The compound had 3 water storage tanks, but during the siege, 2 of them were damaged and couldn't hold water properly. And eventually, the FBI just cut off water and power in an attempt to starve them out, which is part of a siege.
Is this legal?
Not explicitly.
Like these all sound like, I mean, okay, these people are doing, really terrible things like inside the complex, but like, it just seems very like, I don't really know the word, but like, I don't know, like Neanderthal, like to like starve people out. It just seems very like, what you do like when you're in Afghanistan in 2001.
Well, and it's
like it sounds like a torture. I mean, that's essentially what it is it's like
they're
torture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of pushback against the government, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Oh, shocking! People don't love the government.
Okay. So cutting off the power and water, and then ruining their existing water storage tanks. This forced people to start relying on stockpiled MREs and any rainwater they could collect. And I don't know if you've ever eaten an MRE, but they're not good.
I haven't eaten them, but I've seen them. Matt used to get them all the time.
I have. So when I was much younger, I had like my stepmom's dad or something got his hands on cases of MREs from somewhere, and we thought it was good fun to eat them. And I don't know why, because they're terrible.
And MREs are like meal ready. What are they? What does it stand for?
Like meal ready to eat or something like that.
They're basically like astronaut food. It's like vacuum sealed, like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or like steak and potatoes, and it's like vacuum sealed and nasty. Yeah. It's like a package of tuna that you just open up, but it's supposed to be like a whole meal. Mm-hmm. And then they have like peanut butter cups and like candy.
Yeah, World War II, they came with cigarettes.
Do you want to know a piece of trivia? Do you want to know why M&Ms have the plastic coating or like the shiny coating on the outside?
To keep it from melting.
I hate you.
Yeah, no, I know.
That was my piece of information again.
Sorry, kid. Yeah, but they're not good. They do the job at eating nothing but MREs to sustain yourself is almost torture in and of itself.
Yeah, again, that would just get me straight out of that place. No food. Oh.
Like, have you ever seen those things in the grocery store? It's like a Kraft single, but it's peanut butter. I haven't seen them for a long time, but I have seen them. It's just like a sheet of peanut butter to make building a sandwich easier, I guess.
Ew. Yeah. That is so weird.
Despite the aggressive tactics being used against them, Koresh ordered another 11 people out of the compound who were all arrested as material witnesses.
Do you think these were just like the wives that he thought were ugly?
I'm done with you.
Yeah, he was just like, I have to choose between like all 34 of my wives, so you, out. I've changed my mind. Thanks for coming.
Oh, I think I forgot to mention also, but the 19 children that were released earlier, he released some caretakers with them, and they were all arrested. One of the members was charged with conspiracy to murder, despite the government starting this. What shocked everyone outside the compound was the willingness of the children to stay inside with Koresh. The 19 kids that were... Oh, fuck.
They're the easiest to manipulate. They're the easiest ones to make, like... to make you think that this is like how life is supposed to be. So I feel like that's not that surprising.
Well, yeah, you raise them in this, and that's all the kid knows.
They believe everything their parent believes until they hit like teenager. I want to stay with Daddy Koresh.
Oh, yeah, here we go. So I guess I didn't need to say that earlier. But the 19 kids that were sent out earlier were sent out with some caretakers who were immediately separated from the kids and arrested. And the kids inside the compound knew that. Like, Koresh was like, oh, look what they're doing to your parents.
Oh.
Yeah. It's very manipulative behavior, but again, kids are easy to do that with.
Also cult leader.
And, yeah, cult leader. As negotiations wore on, Koresh became more and more difficult to deal with. His religious zeal was something the FBI was completely unable to work around. Possibly because of the starvation and sleep deprivation, but the already unhinged Koresh was becoming more and more unhinged. He began claiming that he personally was the second coming of Christ, who had been commanded by God to remain in the compound. The FBI considered using snipers to kill David Koresh and other key members of the Branch Davidians, but worried that the rest of the members would commit suicide, like what happened at the Jonestown complex in 1978. Which I think is another story I'm going to cover. That'd be a good one. They killed a senator. Or congressman, I don't remember which.
Geez, maybe you should also tell the fucking Lori Vallow. Well, Lori Vallow would be like a mix between true crime and... She basically killed her kids because she said something like, the coming of Christ, and I have to sacrifice my children, and it was...
How many people use God as an excuse to murder?
I mean, if you were to put like the statistics next to each other, it's probably like 80% of the people who kill people is for like a cause. Like that, like a religious cause, according to Criminal Minds. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, what are the reasons people...
religious documentary, Criminal Minds.
I don't know. Love Criminal Minds.
In April 1993, the FBI and U.S. General Attorney... Wow. In April 1993, the FBI and U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno approached President Bill Clinton with a plan to assault the Mount Carmel Center, stating that they needed to stop the child abuse going on inside and that the siege was costing $1 million every week.
Oh my gosh.
And the agents outside were getting tired of waiting. Clinton gave her the go-ahead, and on April 19th, 1993, the final assault began. And the FBI used 50 caliber rifles and armored vehicles equipped with explosive rounds to punch holes in the building so tear gas could be pumped in. The FBI used loudspeakers to tell the Branch Davidians not to fire on the vehicles, and that if they come out peacefully, no force would be used on them. When the church members did fire on the agents in approaching vehicles, because big-ass armored vehicle punching holes in my wall, and the FBI just pumped more tear gas into the building. The Branch Davidians refused to come out, instead taking shelter in a concrete bunker under the complex. At around noon, 3 fires broke out around the compound almost simultaneously and spread quickly. This is probably the image that most people bring to mind when they think of Waco. You know, just a walled compound with huge clouds of smoke just billowing out. That's kind of the only thing I remember from it, because I was 4 when this happened. Fire raging above compound walls while sheets of billowing white smoke pours from the building.
Do you know that there's a Netflix about this?
Yeah, the guy they got to play David Koresh is Taylor Kish, however you say his last name. Way too hot for David Koresh.
Have you seen it?
No, but I know enough about it to know that it's super problematic because they just kind of whitewashed the fact that he's fucking a bunch of kids.
Oh, wow.
And also made him like a rock star and stuff when he was just pretty good at playing a guitar.
In the Ted Bundy movie where Zac Efron plays him, like, the thing that people don't talk about with Ted Bundy is that he was a necrophiliac too. And like that never happened in that show, and they just made him out to be like this super handsome guy who was really smart. Like, no, he was disgusting. Like, make him disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a bad habit of making people way cooler than they are.
Which at first I like Zac Efron to play Ted Bundy because the way that they dressed him and made him look like he looked just like him, and he did have a similar character. He did a good job playing him, but like, you gotta show that like
he porks corpses.
He porks corpses. That should be the name of a podcast. Pork corpses. Corpse porking. Are these the, I'm assuming, pictures that you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
This was in
The
1990.
aerial one especially is the one that I always think of.
The what?
The aerial one. This one up in the top corner. That's the one that I remember most vividly.
And this was in 1993.
Yep. April. So this is the very end of the siege.
More trivia for you. Our house burned down, so gross. That's gnarly fire, man. It was 3 fires and they just randomly started.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Only 9 individuals escaped the burning of Mount Carmel.
9?
Only 9 people were able to get out.
How many were in there?
At this point, like 80, 88, I think.
Oh my god, they just like burned to death?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, sorry.
76 people were either trapped inside or refused to leave for so long that escape was no longer an option.
Oh.
Arson investigators found a partial tunnel collapse that may have blocked one potential escape route, and the collapse of the building structure could have blocked others. Medical examiners found that some of the women and children died from skull injuries.
Oh.
At least 20 members were shot to death, including Koresh himself and 5 children. 1 child was stabbed to death.
He killed them.
Somebody did.
Somebody killed them when they were all gonna die anyway.
Mm-hmm. So they think that Koresh is like second in command shot him in the head, if I remember right.
Do you think like he asked him to?
Probably. I don't think Koresh committed suicide, but I think he had somebody kill him for him, which I guess is still kind of suicide, but
it's like friend-assisted suicide.
Yeah. Some of the bodies found were posed in a manner consistent with cyanide poisoning, which is an after effect of CS gas burning. CS gas burning.
Which is?
Tear gas.
Oh.
Yeah, so the tear gas actually caught on fire.
Oh.
Which creates a cyanide gas, and a bunch of people suffocated.
So at this point, we're trying to figure out where the fires came from.
Yeah, we don't...
Is what you're saying, because we don't know, because nobody in... I know, there's a fucking fly. Okay, so either... Well, do you have like a list of them? I'm thinking in my head.
No, the rest is kind of everything that comes afterwards.
Am I being annoying?
No, you're good. This is... No.
Okay, so the possible things are the tear gas caught on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arson also, or like, are those like the same? Like someone lit it on fire?
No, what I see, because tear gas doesn't just combust.
Right.
It's not supposed to. I think what happened is the concentration of tear gas was so much, and then with the government also firing rounds into the building, I think something ignited.
So do you think it ignited and then David Koresh was like, oh, fuck, we're going down, like, shoot everybody?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened.
And someone also had, like, axe marks in there or, like, cut?
Skull injuries.
Like, were probably hit on the head to be killed?
Probably.
Wow.
Yeah. But they didn't have enough bullets to shoot everybody, so they just started bashing heads in.
But 9 people made it out.
Yeah,
so
9
you
people
think
were able to escape.
Obviously David Koresh and like the leaders were going to be going down, right? Like they were going to go to prison or whatever. So like that's why they would have killed themselves. Why did they kill the kids? Maybe because they were just trapped for too long. There was literally no way for them to get out. Yeah, they couldn't
get out. So instead of letting the kids suffocate to death.
I mean, fuck David Koresh, but like if I was in a burning building with a bunch of kids and I knew that we were going to die, I'd probably shoot us all too. I'll probably be removing that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'd rather have that than burning to death. Or, well, I guess you'd suffocate, but that's just as terrible. I don't know.
Yeah. No, none of it is good, but I don't think that the government explicitly set out to murder these people. I think it was just gross mismanagement of a bunch of things. To this day, the Siege of Waco is studied for its long-lasting effects on law enforcement. The newly elected ATF director made the report on Waco required reading for all new agents.
Wow.
And adjusted their training to exhaust all options before using aggressive tactics. Doesn't always work. And the buildings were bulldozed 2 weeks after the siege ended, and all that remains on the site is a small chapel erected years later and the concrete supports that once held the Mount Carmel Center. 12 of the surviving Branch Davidians were charged with things ranging from conspiracy to murder federal agents, aiding and abetting the murder of federal agents, and various firearms-related charges. The Branch Davidians were acquitted of all murder-related charges, but 5 of them were charged with lesser charges. God, how many more times can I say charge? With lesser charges, including voluntary manslaughter. 8 members were convicted for various firearms charges. Some of the remaining Branch Davidian members and over 100 family members of those who died filed a civil suit against all federal bodies involved, seeking monetary damages for those lost. After a month-long trial, the case was dismissed on grounds that the Branch Davidians opened fire on federal agents executed unlawful warrants. They appealed, and the appeal was denied, saying that the federal agents acted entirely within proper guidelines from start to finish.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This.
It's good. No, that's good and right. Yeah.
Okay. There's a dog drinking water. We are watching the new season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where the dude from Scrubs plays like the police union guy, the guy in charge of the police union, Dr. Cox.
Oh yeah.
And that's what this is making me think of. Like all this shit happened. He's like, "Did you just say the M word? We don't say the M word." That's what that made me think of.
That is, I mean, it's surprisingly accurate. Even, I mean, I know they're trying to satirize police unions, but it's not wrong. Depending on who you talk to, the Waco tragedy is either the tale of a cult gone bad that got the ending it deserved, or excessive government overreach.
Mm-hmm.
I think both viewpoints are valid and while also not entirely correct. David Koresh was a monster of a person who made no bones about taking child brides and probably didn't actually care about any of the men in his congregation, or the women if we're being honest. But the religion existed long before Koresh came along, and the religious views never really changed all that much. I mean, obviously there were differences, like women can only have sex with me, but by and large, the Branch Davidians after Koresh took over weren't all that much different from the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists started by Victor Houteff.
I heard a dog.
During the siege, several scholars who studied apocalypticism in religious groups attempted to persuade the FBI out of their actions. They said that the actions taken by the FBI would push the Davidians further into their belief that the biblical end times was coming and their actions had some cosmic importance.
What was the picture that we have of David Koresh? What is he in? Like a barbecue sauce?
A barbecue sauce. I'm still not really sure what's up with that.
Googling it.
Their beliefs seemed extreme to any outsiders, but to the Davidians, these beliefs were meaningful, and they were willing to die for them. I'm going to pull a quote from a Vox article I read. But all too often, notes Dr. Megan Goodwin, a visiting fellow at Northeastern University specializing in American minority religions, the term cult is used to delegitimize and diminish religious practices that don't fit neatly into the American, Christian, often Protestant, mainstream, and justify violence that would not be used against more established religious groups. She notes that the term cult is itself controversial in scholarly circles. Many prefer the more neutral term new religious movements.
That's okay.
What?
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I mean, I often make the joke that a cult is just a religion without tax exemption.
Right.
Quoting Dr. Goodwin again, my standard joke is that cult equals religion, community, you don't like. So basically the same thing, says Goodwin. But she notes the political ramifications of identifying something as a cult are real and often violent. And that is all I have.
That's the Waco Siege.
Siege? Yeah.
Siege. I don't know. Wow. Very Warren Jeffs.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got this super gross guy, and this is a tale that actually inspires a lot of other people into doing horrible, terrible things, which we will talk about next. A lot of people see it as government overreach, and even to this day, a lot of people in typically right-wing militia groups view what the government did here as government overreach and something that never should have happened, and use that as a justification for their own actions. So,
wow.
Thoughts? What do you think?
Gross.
Yeah.
I just think it's all really gross. It just is very It just reminds me a lot of Warren Jeffs and like how many stories start. It's interesting to see how many things started completely innocent or like started as something really small and then like suddenly became this massive event in history. Like it's just a weird thing for me to think about. So anything with child brides though is like nasty. And obviously I hate that dogs were killed. So I hated this episode. Ew.
Yep. Ew.
You need like some kind of sign off.
Later.
No. How often are you going to have episodes released?
I don't know yet. It just depends on how fast I can write them.
When's the last time you listened to our podcast?
A while.
Okay, so we end it the same every time, and then my little ending thing is the same every time. So do you want to say like, thanks for joining us this week, next week, blah, 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 or like, I don't know. Thanks for listening to my first episode. I don't know.
No, we can do that.
Great, because it's still recording, so.
That's good.
I don't know.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. Nope. Thanks for joining us this week on History is a Crime. Next week, we're talking about Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing. So, see you then.
Okay, bye.
Bye.